Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. The program is Focal Point, the network AFR Talk. And I talked at the end of the last segment about what's going on in Cyprus right now. This is staggering to behold, because if this can happen in the European Union, in fact, this is happening at the direction of the European Union, where a sovereign government is being ordered to confiscate money, private property, out of bank accounts. I mean, this has always been considered sacred. And now they've just gone in and sliced 10% off the top of everybody. This is every savings account in Cyprus, not just some of them, but every one of them. Here's a piece from Zero Hedge. Everybody's trying to call this a tax. This is not a tax. It's just flat out robbery. They just went in and took it. This is what Tyler Durden says. There was no tax on the bank accounts in Cyprus. There still is no tax. The Cyprus Parliament has not passed it and will not vote on it until tomorrow. So whatever action takes place, it is retroactive. Next, this was not enacted by Cyprus. The nations of Europe, Germany, France, the Netherlands, and the rest demanded that this take place. So this was a 10% slice. If you had more than 100,000 euro in a savings account, they took 10% of it, just grabbed it. It's gone. It's theirs. You'll never see it again. If you had less than 100,000, they went and took 7% of it. Now they're renegotiating some of that because the outrage has been enormous in Cyprus, as you can imagine. And what happened, people found out about this, and so they went to the ATMs to try to get their money out of the banks before it was taken from them, and the ATMs dried up. The ATMs won't work. They shut down the ATMs, and they found when they got into their accounts that the money had already been taken. The 10%, the 7% had already been grabbed. It had already been confiscated. It had already been frozen. So you can understand that they are absolutely outraged in Cyprus. Now, it turns out there's some funny money in Cyprus. It looks like Cyprus is kind of the Cayman Islands of Europe. They got a lot of money from Russia. But you think about this. They're taking 10% of all of this Russian money. That's Vladimir Putin. Now, you don't mess with Vladimir Putin. This is a guy that has his picture on Drudge with a harpoon gun. I'll never forget that day where Drudge had two pictures, one of Putin and one of Barack Obama. Barack Obama's on vacation in Hawaii. He's riding a little Schwinn bicycle with the little streamers, and he's got this goofy grin on his face, and he's got a little bike helmet, and he's kind of traipsing down the bike path. And then right next to it is Vladimir Putin holding a harpoon gun. And, I looked at that and said, oh, great. We got Pee Wee Herman. They got Dirty Harry. But that's the reality. I mean, they're taking billions from Vladimir Putin. Now, I think that's not a guy that you want to mess with. And then Tyler Durden goes on to say, look, these are bank accounts. This is not an investment. This is not a bond. It's not a stock. It's not any sort of investment. A bank account is the private property of a citizen or a corporation. It does not belong to the government. Now, furthermore, he says you have deposit insurance in Europe. So every bank account is guaranteed in Europe up to 100,000 euros. That was supposed to be the case, not anymore. Where's the guarantee if the people that guarantee it and say, hey, don't worry, we'll make good up to 100 grand, they come in and slice 10% off or 7% off without you even knowing it's happened, without your permission, without any kind of approval from Parliament. So, Tyler Durden says, look, so much for the meaning of any guarantee in Cyprus or any other country in Europe. And here's what he says. If they can void deposit insurance in Cyprus, then they can void it in any country in Europe. Further, if they can void deposit insurance, then they can void bond covenants with the scratch of a pen on paper. Nothing now is safe. Nothing is safe. In other words, if Cyprus gets away with this, then nothing anywhere is safe from the tyrannical and oppressive and greedy hand of government. So what the European Union has done here is they have just confiscated private property with no warrant, with no consent of the governed, just grabbed it and taken it. This is private property. That's what's shocking about this. John Adams said, the moment the idea is admitted into society that property is not as sacred as the law of God, and that there is not a force of law and public justice to protect it, anarchy and tyranny commence. And that's where we are headed. Now, let me see if I got some more information here to pass on to you. I got a number of stories here. Want to make sure you get the information on this. And the media is calling this thing a haircut. Everybody's going to take a 7% haircut or a 10% haircut. Now, imagine you got a note from your bank this morning and saying, we just lopped 10%, we just took 10%. Your savings account, your checking account, it now has 10% less than it did yesterday. 10% less than what was in your last day. We just took it. I mean, you would be outraged, and you would think that's unthinkable that could happen in a civilized society. That's what happens in banana republics. That's what happens in third world countries. That's what happens under dictatorships. And now this is being done in Europe, ladies and gentlemen, not in some Central American or South American junta banana republic, but it's being done in Europe. And the media is calling this a haircut. It's not a haircut. It's like a scalping. Let's see. And the problem here, and this is what Megan McArdle points out, and she's a very insightful writer on economic issues. What you had in Cyprus is when people heard about this, what did they do? They went to get their money out of the bank. What is that? That's a bank run. That's a bank run. And the only thing that stopped it is they've got a bank holiday in Cyprus today. People can't go to the bank and get their money. The banks are closed. In fact, they're not going to reopen the banks until Thursday. So, and who knows how much longer it's going to be after Thursday. Originally, the banks were going to be open tomorrow, but they realized if we open the banks tomorrow, everybody's going to come and take out every last dollar they've got. The bank is going to be emptied. And when you have a run on the bank like that, I mean, banks can't handle a run like that. No banking system can survive a bank run. If everyone tries to get their money out at once, even the soundest, most prudently managed bank in the world will fail because they cannot liquidate their loan assets fast enough to keep the cash moving out the door. Well, I want to bring into our decision maker line Dan Celia, host of Financial Issues right here on AFR Talk. And Dan, we've got just a couple minutes left in this segment, but are you as outraged as I am about this confiscation of private property in the banks in Cyprus? Talk to me.
Brian, I'm so outraged, and I'm glad you said what you just said. It is a confiscation, and mainstream media over there and even here are trying to paint this as a tax on savings. It's not a tax. It's a confiscation. This is government confiscating people's money. It's nothing more than that. And it can't be looked at as a tax. We don't want to paint that picture. So, yeah, I am incredibly outraged. It is a government that is not suffering the consequence of all their decisions, and they made idiotic decisions, Cyprus in particular, in buying Greek debt that failed, and this is what's happening. So they're going to lay it on the back of people's savings accounts. It's outrageous.
Now, Dan, I want to talk to you about the possible implications down the road for the United States, because you and I have talked before about your prediction that at some point we're going to have a devaluation of currency. And I'm not talking about that exact scenario here, but you were talking about the fact that the banks may close down for a time, maybe a week, maybe even 2 weeks. And now here we've got the banks in Cyprus. This is a European country in the middle of the Mediterranean, and their banks are shut down at least till Thursday. I haven't been tracking that in the last hour or so, maybe longer. And so everybody's thinking, probably hearing you say the banks could shut down. That's Dan. It's just hyperbole. It's exaggeration. Now it's happening right in front of us. And Dan, a couple minutes left. I want you to comment on this. I mean, people in the government are actively scheming right now to take over the 401ks of the American people and promise us some kind of government guaranteed annuity. What this does, it makes it look like that is imminently possible.
Well, it is possible. And, President Reagan, holy mackerel, President Obama went to, in 2010, in July of 2010, remember it very specifically, went to the Department of Labor and said, what's this going to look like if we confiscated 401ks? So it's not as if it is not even a part of his ideology. We know that he's thought about it, and now, obviously, it would be some sort of political suicide if anybody joined it. It would have to be done by way of an executive order. I got to believe there would be outrage. But look, anything can happen, Brian. Banks will have to, if there's a devaluation, just like Cyprus was naive enough to think that there's not going to be a run on the bank. I mean, it's ridiculous. There's going to be lines around every bank in Cyprus by the end of this week or whenever it is they finally open.
And I just wondered, Dan, they got to know that. They got to know that everybody's going to want to get every last single dollar that's in the bank before the government takes even more of it. So I don't see how they can open the banks at all. I mean, for who knows how long. I don't either.
Yep.
And so the money's just frozen. I mean, these people went to the ATMs and they found out that money had already been taken, had already been confiscated. So what can the people in Cyprus do? And what should be the takeaway for us looking down the road in America?
Well, the one thing that is typical of a government, and I didn't hear your last comment, I'm sorry, Brian, but they originally were taking 6.75% of everybody's money, no matter how much you had, and they thought it would cause a run on the bank, so they changed it to 3% confiscation for those under $100,000 in your checking and savings. Well, it doesn't matter. You can make it 1%. Just the government stepping in, and 15% if you're among the wealthy. So the thought that it wasn't going to cause a run on the bank, and it's going to cause problems. The big problem is going to be what's it going to do in Spain, Italy, other banks, because what it does is it shakes the confidence of the European Union, the central bank, and any kind of their equivalent to FDIC insurance.
All right, Dan, I got to let you go. We're up against a hard break here, but thanks for taking time to give us some illumination, man. Appreciate it. God bless you. Listen to you tomorrow.
Thank you, Brian.